Hello, this is Kunal Nagpal addressing you, respected brothers and sisters, on the topic of prime concern for our Indian economy, that is, poverty. Dear friends, poverty has been a very big menace for the Indian economy. Both the rural segment as well as the urban segment of the population have been very badly affected with this particular stigma, that is poverty, from quite a number of years. India, being a developing country, is in a continuous battle with this particular issue, that is poverty. And as per the recent report by the UNDP, India has done substantial progress in the overall abolishment of this particular menace from the economy. The rural segment of the population, which had been majorly affected with poverty, has also been able to tackle with this particular menace in an effective manner. All credits to the mass awareness campaigns and the effective strategic policies implemented by the respectable governmental bodies. So today, my dear friends, we are going to have a very deep, insightful discussion on this particular aspect, that is how our economy has been able to tackle this particular menace. Moreover, what are the further strategies our government is basically planning to work on and to implement them in the near future so as to attain more success in the overall abolishment of this particular menace from the economy holistically. So let's have the deep, insightful discussion in this particular aspect. India makes the great leap upward. Earlier this month, the United Nations Development Programme, that is UNDP, the UN body tasked to measure the global poverty and pursue sustainable development goals, released its 2022 report on global poverty. It was a breath of fresh air. The report argued that a new approach targeting deprivation bundles like sanitation and drinking water had empowered public policy to reduce poverty at scale. Despite this progress, it makes the sobering observation that 1.2 billion people in developing countries continue to live in acute multidimensional poverty. The biggest revelation, though, is India's ability to combat poverty at scale. According to the United Nations Development Programme, India lifted nearly 415 million people out of poverty in the 16 years ended 2020-21. The only other country to achieve this scale was China, our neighboring country, which actually rescued 770 million people from poverty for over 40 years. As a result, the incidence of poverty in the country declined from a staggering 55.1% in 2005-06 to 27% in 2015-16, and then to 16.1% in 2020-21. So the subtext of this achievement is that India just added 415 million stakeholders, more than the population of the United States, to its growth process. And remember that homegrown digital technology is providing an opportunity for the country and this new cohort to leapfrog to the next stage of growth. This is actually a remarkable moment for the Indian public policy. even as it is a pause for thought that it took the country so long to cross the tipping point in its fight against poverty. The UNDP measures poverty multidimensionally. The core of its thesis is that poverty occurs because of the deprivations under three dimensions, that is, health, education, and standard of living. So while health is further broken up into nutrition and child mortality, education is measured in terms of years of schooling and attendance. In the case of standard of living, the overall metrics used by the UNDP are the access to cooking fuel, sanitation, drinking water, and the electricity provision, as well as housing, all of which have been on turbo mode in the last 8 years, and assets. According to the report, this provides a more rounded view of the challenge and also does not undercount the poor. So this measure of poverty is double the number of poor counted using the metric of living on less than $1.9 per day. The UNDP rightly believes that a major dent in poverty can basically be achieved by targeting the deprivation bundles. Its poverty profiles basically reveal that nearly half of the global poor suffer from the deprivation handicap of sanitation and drinking water. The overall deprivations often compound each other, so poverty reduction programs aiming for high impact results should basically analyze the interlinked deprivations to design better policies. The 2022 report argues. Therefore, in the Indian context, the UNDP report identifies the deprivations in cooking fuel and housing as the most common, followed by nutrition and sanitation. So with the benefit of hindsight, it is clear that sustained targeting of these and other deprivations, like developing rural roads connectivity and providing rural safety nets through guaranteed employment, is the basic cause of India's recent record in fighting poverty. From the turn of the millennium, India has been targeting various deprivations. 8 years ago, public policy was tweaked to prioritize and accelerate the alleviation of these deprivations. Initially, this was done in clusters: financial inclusion, that is Jan Dhan; cooking gas, that is Ujjwal; housing, that is Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana; and toilets, that is Swachh Bharat. And individual deprivations like electricity and drinking water, that is Jal Mission, were added progressively. The outcomes were impressive and explain India's fantastic success in fighting poverty in the last 2 decades. The National Family Health Survey 5, that is NFHS 5, reveals a surge in the use of cooking gas, toilets, access to electricity, and ownership of bank accounts and homes by women. The All India Debt and Investment Survey conducted in 2019 basically corroborates the financial inclusion trends captured by the NFHS 5. It found that nearly 3 in 4 Indians, that is 75% of Indians living in rural or urban areas, now own a bank account. This is actually a great victory for India. The big surge in financial inclusion and its pairing with individual identity, that is Aadhaar card, and mobile phone created an economic GPS, that is an economic global positioning system, for every social welfare beneficiary. JAM, that is Jan Dhan Aadhaar Mobile Telephony, has thereby ensured targeting and consequently reduction in the leakages. Therefore, it is estimated that the exchequer has saved upwards of 2 lakh crore rupees so far. Similarly, the rural road connectivity, which enabled bridging of the connectivity deficit and initiated as mission mode under the Atal Bihari Vajpayee government, was accelerated such that in the last 2 decades, India has either built or redeveloped over 6 lakh kilometers of rural roads. The mission to provide drinking water to the rural homes was started in 2019 when nationally only 16.9% rural households had access. Since then, 7.16 crore connections have been provided, ensuring that 1 in 2 rural households today have drinking water access. Alongside, the Government of India embarked on a program targeting the most deprived regions in the country in 2019. Under the Gram Swaraj Abhiyan, 63,974 large villages with a very high population of deprived communities were provided with basic 7 standard of living services. No surprise then that poverty alleviation accelerated in the 6 years ended 2021. It declined from 27.17% in 2015-16 to 16.4% during 2019-21. This is actually a great victory, basically indicating that nearly 10% drop in the overall poverty levels. So this is actually a great leap of progress by the Indian economy towards the removal of this particular menace of poverty from the Indian economy. Now, going forward, let's discuss another very important aspect in this particular dimension by the government efforts to eradicate this menace of poverty from the Indian economy. What are the future projections the government is basically proposing to implement? As per our respected Minister Piyush Goyal ji, India needs 108 million tons of food grains a year to be distributed to the poor. The country basically needs 108 million tons of food grains every year to support 80 crore poor people who get 10 kgs of rice or wheat every month under the Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Yojana, said Union Food Minister Piyush Goyal on Friday. In an interactive session at the Federation of Telangana Chambers of Commerce and Industry, Mr. Goyal said there is actually a fear that the production of food grains may drop in Uttar Pradesh and Bihar, though it is not confirmed yet due to untimely rain. The minister said 80 crore people were already getting food security with food grains of about 5 kgs per person, or 35 kgs for the very poor Antyodaya families, and under the Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Yojana, the quota was actually doubled with an additional 5 kgs. I need 40 lakh tons every month for additional food grains. We already need 50 lakh tons in addition to that, so that it means 90 lakh tons of food grains, wheat and rice every month we require. So in a year, it becomes nearly 1080 lakh tons. Poor people almost get it free, he said. But as the whole world today is in crisis, the government has to ensure food security for the people, Mr. Goyal said, justifying the 20% levy on rice exports. keeping in view due to the global turmoil period we have been facing, the food and energy sectors are the main sectors which have been affected the worst because of the ongoing crisis of Ukraine-Russia war, which has led to the supply chain disruptions worldwide. According to him, the price of rice has basically remained stable, and therefore the government did not stop the exports of food grain. Mr. Goyal, also the Commerce Minister, said Indian exports clocked 675 billion US dollars last year for the first time ever. Till September, we are at about 17% growth for the first 6 months, and this year, 75 years of India's independence, that is Amrit Mahotsav, we are hoping to cross 750 billion US dollars, he hoped. Exports are basically going to define the future of India, and it should actually be turned into a manufacturing hub, he added. A great visionary approach. This is the true trait of a dynamic and visionary leader. And that's what we should actually be proud of, our excellent leadership pattern. Going forward, let's discuss a debate on freebies, which is actually as important as this particular discussion of the overall efforts being made to basically free India from the menace of poverty. The debate on freebies is actually equally important, as this will impact the future growth. Respected Finance Minister Mrs. Nirmala Sitharaman on Friday said it was quite important to debate freebies, as these will impact the future growth and revenue of certain states, while taking a dig at the political parties offering free power at the cost of taxpayers' money, or having to undertake extra borrowing or impose fresh taxes. The minister said that it was important to discuss the good governance, as it was about how much you value the taxpayers' money. That is, how you are utilizing the overall taxpayers' money in the overall development of the nation. So obviously, if we are utilizing that money while distributing the freebies to the government, while distributing the freebies to the public, this is actually the misuse of the taxpayers' money. She further quoted, "If I don't debate freebies, will it not impact the future growth? Will it not affect certain revenues of certain states or the center?" She said it while delivering the NTR Memorial Lecture in Visakhapatnam. She asserted that governance was no longer a leaky bucket, unlike in the past. We have contained the leaky bucket process. There are no leaks, and the beneficiary who should get that money gets it, not just 15 paise out of a rupee. That is because the technology has come up, Mrs. Sitharaman said. Speaking at a separate function in the Kakinada district, Mrs. Sitharaman stressed on the need to remove certain taxes which are impacting exports, and the new export policy which would help the exporters by offering incentives. So the Union Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharamanji basically spoke these points during an interaction with a group of Indian overseas scholars and students from various US universities in Washington, D.C. on 15th October. This is the great session which describes the issue which needs to be addressed urgently. That is the topic prevailing to the distribution of freebies by the respected governmental bodies. This highlights that we should actually ponder deeply on this particular aspect, because it is actually symbolizing the leaky bucket process, that is the misuse of the taxpayers' money, and necessary efforts should actually be made to basically make everyone aware of the disadvantages of this particular policy, of this particular format being followed by the Delhi government. So I hope today's session has been quite productive in enriching the overall thought process of you dear brothers and sisters, and I hope this would ignite a great sense of enthusiasm and a sense of responsibility towards the nation, a great sense of realization towards our motherland, right? And to basically get aware of the extraordinary efforts being made by our respected leaders to curb the social menace of poverty from our motherland, thereby increasing the overall standard of living of the country's citizens as a whole. Obviously, keeping in mind the uncertainties existing in the overall global scenario, the overall global chaos or the turmoil we are facing in the holistic global economy. India, being a developing country, is actually making substantial progress towards its holistic development and the attainment of the sustainable development goals. This is actually worth an applause. Simultaneously, we should also try to get aware of the malpractices or of the poor policies being run by the opposition party in the Delhi government, that is the distribution of the freebies. We should try to analyze the core dynamics and the core intricacies of this particular format and how this will affect the country at large in the long run, depriving the countrymen of the basic advantage, right? Because the misuse of the taxpayers' money would obviously lead to a leaky bucket process. Therefore, urgent action is required to curb this particular scenario in the long run. So that's all for today's session. Namaste.